This past Friday, I was assaulted by ICE alongside some other protesters. That day was probably the most harrowing day of protest I have ever attended in my life. Partly because anything we dealt with didn't hold a candle to what the people trapped inside that facility are enduring. My name is Abughazaleh. I'm running for Congress in the 9th District of Illinois, and I have been an outspoken opponent of the Broadview detention facility. This is where ICE headquarters its operations in the Chicago area. I have now been to this facility 3 times. Earlier this summer, I attended a vigil at the facility. The ICE agents barely came out, although they did call an Uber Eats driver to bring them dinner and then made the driver come inside because they were too scared of us. The Friday before last, I attended a morning protest at that facility. I stayed for several hours, and this past Friday, I attended another morning protest. I arrived at 5:30 in the morning. Some people had been there for hours already. We sat on public property, streets that belong to Broadview, and waited for these ICE vans to load up people and deport them. They tried to intimidate us with vans through the gate, flashing headlights. And we watched through the mesh as people were marched into these vans. They were in the same clothes they were detained in, because that's part of the problem with Broadview. This is supposed to be a processing facility. People aren't supposed to be here for more than 12 hours at a time. But we've gotten reports for people being held for days or even weeks, including grandmothers and pregnant women. But because it's classified as a processing facility, these people aren't given beds. They are not given hot meals. They are not given hygienic products. They are literally sleeping on the concrete. We yelled through the gate to let these detainees know that they were not alone. And as they were being deported, Broadview police stood by and watched as masked men came out of the gate and forcibly removed us. It took 2 men to lift me up, and then they threw me on the ground. My knees bled. There was no process, no identification, no accountability. I think if anyone did that to me in any other public scenario, it would qualify as assault. But for some reason, this was the exception. The vans took off and more protesters joined us around 7 a.m. It was a peaceful protest. We sang songs, we said chants. I even started a craft circle on the pavement. Occasionally, ICE officers would come out of the garage or come out of the facility and people would yell at them. But there was no violence. It was just people trying to support our neighbors, to let them know that they are not alone. And then around 10 a.m., the purge voice came on.
You are commanded to immediately disperse. If you do not do so, you may be arrested or are subject to other police action.
Somebody make a remix of this shit.
Other police action may include the use of chemical or less lethal munitions.
We saw shooters on the roof, and then about 24 men in full riot gear came out. They had every weapon you can imagine. Real guns, tear gas, pepper balls. They were all wearing gas masks. They made this show a couple of times. They would come out, try to scare us. Some people left, but more than I expected stayed. And then they would do a formation walking backwards into the building. None of the protesters there, including myself, had weapons. We had cardboard signs, drums, and I guess I had knitting needles. But there was nothing to justify being in full riot gear. In fact, I should note that the windows here are boarded up. They weren't boarded up the first time I went, but they were the second time. I guess people praying and singing songs is just so terrifying. This song and dance continued. They came out, they went back in, they came out, they went back in. Not a single one of these officers had any identification on them. We found 2 badges the entire time, and they just had numbers, no names. They all wore masks. Most of them wore caps, and most of them wore sunglasses as well. Later that morning, we had the highest time of escalation. The garage opened up, and a van was coming through the parking lot. This van was full of immigrants that had been detained, and it was truly one of the most harrowing things I have ever seen or heard in my life. The police stood in front of the gate to protect this van, as people were banging on the doors to get out.
Why are you kidnapping people? We're with you! Why are you kidnapping people?
The doors were literally moving. You could see and hear it. And meanwhile, the Broadview police, which is not a huge police force, probably half of their officers were just at this protest, were standing around. We kept saying there's a crime going on behind you. But they stood there and they watched. And that's when ICE tried to start chaos. They came back out in their riot gear. They shoved us back. They felt like big, strong men. And they brought those people inside the facility. I myself was shoved back, as were some of my friends. I didn't get thrown to the ground this time, but one guy did cop a feel. Once again, no identification, no process, no accountability. Around noon, it seemed like there weren't going to be any more deportation actions that day, so I went home to catch up on sleep. Later on that day, a protester at this facility was shot with a pepper ball. And once again, no one at these protests were being violent. Since I posted the clip of ICE forcibly removing me from the pavement and throwing me back on the ground on Friday, I've seen some comments that seem to be genuinely in good faith, saying that, well, it's the law, and you're getting in the way of a federal operation. It is my First Amendment right to protest just as it is yours. And just because something is the law does not mean it's moral. We create and change laws every single day. In fact, I am running to be one of those people who can change the law. And throughout history, atrocities have been justified under the guise of legality. Laws are things we make. Morality and dignity are things we are born with. And the escalation I've seen just at this facility, from being at a vigil to being at a protest to being assaulted by ICE, is indicative of the times we are in. ICE is moving with impunity. They are being given billions of our tax dollars to commit crimes against humanity. And I do not believe that anyone is safe from Trump's secret police. This is what weak men do to feel strong. I mean, look at these guys. Did they get a Call of Duty costume at Spirit Halloween? It's ridiculous. But even though they're ridiculous, they are being given essentially endless authority by this administration, which is why it's more important than ever to stand up against ICE. If it's not for the dignity of your neighbor, do it because you will eventually be next. And if you're in the area, you can do something about it. This Friday, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., you can come to the Broadview processing facility at 1930 Beach Street. Protest alongside us. Show that we will not stand for this. Insist that our government needs to treat humans like humans. This should not be a controversial position to take. And as for my part, I'm going to try to continue to use my platform and power in any way I can to fight this fascist takeover. As I'm recording this, Northwestern sent out an email to all of its students, essentially curbing their First Amendment rights. So we're going to be distributing business card-sized flyers at Northwestern and other campuses in and around the 9th District so students know their rights. They'll know what to do if they're detained by ICE, and they will know their rights under the Constitution. And if you want to help us with this campaign, help us with the costs, you can chip in at catforillinois.com. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you this Friday, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. at 1930 Beach Street, the Broadview Processing Facility. See you there.